Hello and welcome to the World Wanderers podcast, a proud part of the Wander Barn Podcast Network.
I'm Ryan.
I'm Amanda.
And we're your hosts.
We're a traveling couple and digital nomads taking you on our adventures as we explore locations, destinations, and careers.
Enjoy the show.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the World Wanderers podcast. Today on the podcast, we are excited to be joined by Katie and Jordan from the On Arrival podcast.
Katie and Jordan first met at the University of Michigan, and over the past 7 years have built quite the unique traveling life together. Jordan is a professional basketball player who has played in 6 different countries over the past 7 years, from France to Italy to Slovenia and even Russia most recently. And Katie has built a career for herself in the US while balancing a life abroad with Jordan.
Yeah, and so we were really excited to dive in with Katie and Jordan. We talked about what it was like to first move abroad and live this life of playing professional basketball and living in these remote cities around the world. We talked about some of their strangest experiences, some of the things they've learned along the way, and then ultimately how all of these experiences, traveling and living abroad, have led them to create their own business and brand and podcast called On Arrival. So we cover a lot of good things. They have such an interesting lifestyle that's so different from the lifestyle we've built abroad. So it was really, really cool to talk with them, and we think you guys are going to really enjoy this episode.
All right, on to the interview.
Katie, Jordan, welcome to the podcast today. We're really excited to have you here with us.
Thanks for having us. We're excited to be here.
Yeah, let's do this.
Yeah, we're stoked to chat with you and get to know you guys a little bit better. And we'd love to know where you're joining us from today.
We are in Ann Arbor, Michigan. This is kind of like our downtime.
This is our home base. Yeah.
Right. So we are home right now. We'll take off again to a new adventure somewhere new in September. So
yeah.
Okay, nice. And you guys are both from Michigan as well, right?
Yes.
Correct.
This is home for us.
Yep. So Jordan's from like Detroit area. And then I'm originally from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, but then moved to like a small farm town and grew up there. So very unique and different from one another.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're both from Canada, so we kind of consider Michigan as like just waiting to be taken over by Canada at some point. So,
hey, we are open to that.
Whereabouts in Canada?
We're both from the western part. So I'm from British Columbia and Amanda's from Alberta.
Okay, nice. Yeah. We venture to Canada quite often. She's got Canadian family, but Windsor's just across the river. So,
Yeah,
absolutely. So, just to get started, how did you guys meet and kind of how did travel come into your lives together?
You want to tell the story?
Sure. I like my version better than yours anyways.
Yeah.
So Jordan and I both attended the University of Michigan, and I was a dance major there. He played basketball and was an engineer. And we met on this area on the University of Michigan campus called the Diag. It's like this outdoor space. And
the middle of campus.
Right.
Very cliche.
Yeah. It's like it's like the spot on campus. And Jordan was emceeing an event, and I was there to watch myself in a commercial. We ran into each other, and yeah, the rest was history. I mean, it took about 3 weeks for me to accept his invitation on a date. And then ever since then, we've really been inseparable.
Yeah. And then travel kind of came into our lives. I mean, honestly, out of necessity, just being a basketball player. It started during our time in college. You know, she traveled to a few of my games and tournaments and things. Mm-hmm. Afterwards, there was like different trainings in NBA Summer League in Vegas, and kind of took that trip together. And we, from there, a few months later, I was off to Rome. And so it was like, pack your bags, you're moving to Rome. You're going to be in Italy for 9 months. So that was like our first really big adventure together, was just exploring the streets of Rome, the restaurants, the culture, the food.
Yeah.
And we kind of just fell in love with travel from there.
And a fun story there is Jordan was playing in Rome, and I was competing in the Miss America pageant in Atlantic City, New Jersey. And Jordan came for one day all the way from Rome to come and support me at
True
finals
love.
night.
True
So
love. Flew across the world for her.
yes, and then he flew back the next day, and it was actually his birthday. So it was kind of a crazy 24 hours.
Yeah, that's a really cute story.
Yeah.
Dedication. Now you can get away with like FaceTiming in.
Right. Exactly.
But so that's an interesting time. Like I know for us, we met in college. That time when you're kind of getting ready to go in that next life stage, especially I imagine somewhere like Ann Arbor, where probably not a lot of people are sticking around. It's kind of like, where are we going? And if you're trying to build a career in basketball, like it could be like, hey, you know, maybe it's America, maybe it's Italy, maybe it's Russia. Like, what was that time like for you guys as you were kind of just like, no idea where in the world you're going to be in a few months?
Yeah. How was it for you?
You know, for me, it was exciting. And I think Jordan, when he was like, wow, we're not going to be able to be together as much as we were like, you know, in that first year of dating, that was kind of hard just because basically the next year when I was Miss Michigan and he went off to Rome, we went, I think it was about like 6 months without seeing each other. So that was definitely a transition for us from seeing each other all the time to barely seeing each other. And yeah, I mean, from there, I was working in the US on and off. So I would just hop on a flight overseas and come back all the time. So we got used to it.
Yeah. I think it, you know, you mentioned that time. It's very, I do remember like a lot of friends, like, especially from U of M, like they go off to Chicago or New York or LA or, you know, everybody's kind of, like you said, everybody's transient, everybody's moving. And it was a little bit different as a basketball player, but it was also like knowing that something is in front of you. I very much did not want to go overseas. Like,
he was hesitant, yeah.
Well, I you know, you come out of college, you're a basketball player, you want to stay in the NBA, you know, you want to be, I really wanted to be with KT and, you know, like she said, did not want to have to be apart from that. So it was a little bit intimidating. And again, I didn't know what to expect, like moving overseas, and I didn't really want to go. And so I'm, you know, looking back now after 7 years, you mentioned like the bouncing around, like it's been 6 countries, and I'm like extremely grateful for the journey, because had I had stayed, you know, in Chicago or whatever, I wouldn't have been exposed to the world in the way that I have been. And so I'm so grateful for the journey that I've been on.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because for us, we were, so right after college, obviously we're not professional athletes. So we're just thinking like, oh, we could get jobs here in Calgary but we took a big backpacking trip. And on that experience, we were kind of like, okay, this opened our eyes to the world. We're like, we want to do this all the time. Like we want to bounce around the world. And so we've kind of like set out to like intentionally do that with it. Whereas for you guys, it's kind of like been kind of almost the opposite, where it's like, I'm sure Jordan, for you, it would have been like, oh, I would love to stay and, you know, play in Detroit or play in Chicago and have an opportunity like that.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's kind of, like I said, been out of necessity. It's been like, there hasn't been much choice to it.
Yeah, we've kind of been pushed, but I think we're so grateful for that. And I think a lot of people that are passionate about travel but are nervous to take that first step, I mean, we were forced into it, but if you have the courage to just step out and buy the one-way ticket or do the experience, you know, do it.
Yeah. And I like that you say you've been intentional about bouncing around, because that is one of the things that's unique about our situation. A lot of people have been pushed into this kind of lifestyle, but I would say among our friends and, you know, acquaintances through these years, we are very intentional, you know, much more intentional than most about getting out and seeing our hometown where we live at, whether that be Kazan or Ljubljana or, you know, whether it was Nantes, France, these different places, but also kind of taking advantage of the times we have off to go and see other places as well. So we have also been very intentional about going out and seeing more.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And that's actually one of the things that I wanted to ask you about, was just sort of like, what is the experience like of living in a place having, you know, a pretty demanding job, like, you know, playing basketball full time?
Yeah.
it's interesting because you're kind of just plopped down in a place, and we joke like you could put us anywhere in the world and we will thrive, because I feel like I honestly feel that way, that if we're placed anywhere, we know what to do, we know the steps to take, and that just comes from experience. But something that's interesting about basketball is we don't have much choice normally in where we're living, what team exactly we're going to. You might have a few options, but you're kind of, just placed with, here's your car, here's your apartment, hope you like it.
Yeah. And it's funny because you said plop down, and that's exactly how I would describe it. There's not as much choice as, you guys might have the luxury, and I don't want to be rude or anything, but you guys have the luxury of choosing like where we're going to go, where we're going to stay, like, and
you can leave if you're like, I'm not feeling it anymore. We're kind of stuck.
No, we go there, and you don't know much going in. That's one thing about this too. It's like you have an agent who negotiates your contracts and everything, but like when you sign, like we don't often know much about what we're going into, and we rely on talking to past players or whatever to find out their experiences. But you get there and you basically get on a plane and you get off, and it could be anything. You don't know what the apartment's going to be like. You have no idea, like with the car, the arena, the people. It's like you never know what to expect, and it's always different.
Yeah. So I was doing my research for this. I was like looking up like, where is Kazan? And you're like looking at Google Maps, and it's like really like in Russia. It's not like over by Europe. It's like it's out there. So probably not.
You go past Kazan and it's Siberia. So
it's not like the digital nomad hotspot. But so for you, KT, as you guys were like building a relationship, when did you start like thinking, hey, I'm building my career here in the States, but I'd love to be able to like travel and spend this time with Jordan as well? How did you guys navigate that whole situation?
Wow, that's like the $1 million question.
Yeah.
So Jordan and I had a conversation when he started playing professionally. Like, hey, he was like, I have a master's in engineering. I can start working in the States, and you can pursue your career here, and we can build a life here, or we can venture into this crazy basketball lifestyle and travel a different location, a different country every year. And I was like, oh, no. I'm like down with that.
Yeah.
Let's go. So I had to make adjustments along the way. I got my master's in marketing. I did that online in 2.5 years. So I was able to travel with him while I was getting my master's. And then I picked a career. I travel in the US with Alfa Romeo for the auto shows. So I picked a career where I can work for 2 months at a time and then fly back. I can work 3 months straight and then fly back. So that's been a transition for us to figure out that flow, how much we want to be together, how much we can stand not being together. But we've kind of, since we started our podcast on Arrival, things are looking up that we're going to be able to spend more time together and work on that.
Yeah, the thing about KT, and one of the reasons that, I fell in love with her is because she's so ambitious and such a hard, worker. She's always busy. She was the only person I ever met that was more busy than me. And that was, it's been a real challenge, I will say, from the other side of the relationship. I think she kind of undersells it. She's had her own identity for so long, and trying to really like figure out where she wants to go with, her life has been kind of a challenge for both of us to navigate, because when you have a career and, it's kind of at the forefront of everything, it's the priority. Some things suffer. And so that is, again, the beauty of On Arrival and the opportunity to build something together and do something that we're both passionate about. But especially I've seen her light up in, since we've started the podcast, and just the experience that we've had. She's really, starting to really enjoy what she's doing.
And I think that stems from having a performance background, a marketing background, and a love for travel. The podcast really embodies all three of those things.
Yeah, that's really cool. And we definitely want to talk more about your podcast in a little bit. But before we get there, I'd love to hear, you said 6 countries. I know we've listed a couple of them. So can we go through like kind of what your journey's been like in terms of where you guys have lived and that type of thing?
Yeah. So our journey has taken us to Italy, France, Greece, Slovenia, Turkey, and Russia. And so we spent 1 year in every country except Turkey. We spent 2 years. So it's been quite a journey. I think I've played for 8-9 teams in that span between the United States and Europe. So it's been, a whirlwind.
You're kind of progressively heading east.
Yeah.
It was really comfortable
Where
at
next,
first.
right?
We were like in Italy and we were in France and Greece. I mean, Slovenia is right next to Italy. So it's like we're kind of all in the same area. And then it's like Turkey and then it's like Russia. And it's like, oh my gosh, like I am not going any farther east. Like, no.
Yeah. Russian winters probably rival Canadian winters. I'll say that.
Yeah. I'm sure they do, especially in some places as well. Definitely want to talk about Russia. I have a few questions about that, but for kind of just over this process, as you're kind of mentioning it, of like, it's also not, the type of thing where maybe people in our situation would be like, oh, we'd really love to like get in touch with Russia. So we're going to go like live in St. Petersburg for like the summer, like the nicest time of the year. But, with this as well, it's like, you're not going to like, it could be any city and you're also traveling around to all sorts of cities. What's that like kind of, because I guess you kind of get to know a country in a very interesting way, but it is quite like thorough in terms of the different places you're going and the places you're living.
Yeah, it is pretty thorough. And I'll say I'm almost full. My second passport's almost full. So it's been, I've been to over 40 countries at this point. I've been to pretty much, I was looking at the map, almost all of Europe. And it's interesting because you get to go to a lot of different places for traveling for games and things. And a lot of those places you don't get to really experience. Like, been to Luxembourg, or been to this city or this country. And it's like, you go, you stay in the hotel, you play a game and you leave. So sometimes you don't get to explore as much as you'd like to. But to your point, we do get a really intimate experience with the countries that we live in, especially because when you're on a team with, you're playing in Turkey and you have a bunch of Turkish teammates and friends, and KT has Turkish friends, you really can immerse yourself in the culture in a way. You can get to know your teammates, learn a little bit more about them and about their country. And we've taken it upon ourselves, again, to go out and do some of those things that are, truly Turkish or truly Russian, or
make it a priority. Everywhere we go, we try to make it a priority. Like, I'll go have lunch with the mothers of Turkish players. They don't even speak English.
Yeah.
And, they just welcome you into their home to have authentic Turkish cuisine. Or we make friends with strangers. Even, in Russia, I made friends with one of the girls that worked at like a beauty supply store. And we had plans to go to the games and things like that. It's like, hey, you can make friends wherever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds really fun. I love that. And I think it's interesting, like just hearing sort of the way that your, I guess, like lifestyle around travel has been formed. It's so different from ours, but I love the way that you're just kind of immersed in this culture in a way that I think like we can kind of avoid that, if we want to.
Right.
And sometimes even needing Wi-Fi, you're like almost forced to, like you have to be in cities where there's good Wi-Fi and have apartments with good Wi-Fi and find co-working spaces and stuff like that, which means like we have to be intentional about taking time off to go to places that are more remote and that type of thing and get that local experience.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting to just hear about this different way of living. And I know you guys mentioned this a little bit before, but how do you actually, like in your off time and downtime and off season, how do you take advantage of kind of like diving deep into the place that you're in and experiencing it sort of outside of the basketball scene?
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, like the places that we're in, we kind of take advantage. Like KT is very like adamant. So whenever I have a day off, she's like, we're going here. We're going to this museum.
I already have an itinerary set for his off days. Like they're on the calendar and I have A, B, and C that we're going to.
Right. So we one of the things we do when we go to a new place is like we make a list, and especially KT makes a list of like, these are the major things here that we need to go see. Like these are what they're known for. These are the things that are special to this place. And we knock that list out, every chance we get as an off day or a half day or whatever the case might be. But there are also times in my season, which usually last 9 to 10 months. So you're talking from August until May or June even, where I am getting 2, maybe 3 off days per month. So it's a very demanding schedule, but there are times throughout that schedule where you'll get 2, 3, 4, 5 days. Like this past year, we got 5 days off. And so during those 5 days off, we took a trip for 5 days to St. Petersburg. And that was one of the ways that we take advantage. So whenever we got time, we're going and making the most, because it's so much harder to go to St. Petersburg from Michigan than it is from Kazan.
Right.
Yeah. Maybe St. Petersburg, Florida.
Yeah.
It's so funny because one of our first trips that we took together was to St. Petersburg, Florida. And it was like my 22nd birthday. I remember that like it was yesterday. And we just took a little weekend getaway. And then our last trip that we went on, was to St. Petersburg, Russia. So it's kind of funny that our first and our
Full
most
circle.
recent trip were both St. Petersburg.
Synchronicity.
Yes.
And so I'm imagining, living in Slovenia and Turkey and Russia, you have kind of encountered some weird moments. I'd love to hear for each of you kind of like, what's like one of the weirdest things that's happened to you on this adventure?
Well, I think for me, I'm kind of like culturally ambiguous. A lot of people say where they're like, you could look you look like you could be like from here. You definitely are
Every
Canadian. You're definitely Slovenian. You're definitely, I am Italian. But they always hand
Turkish, Russia, whatever. They think always.
I'm a native. So, and it's funny because when we were in France, they always would think I was French, and they would hand me the French menu and they would hand Jordan the English menu, and he's fluent in French. So it's just like, he's always offended. Like we switch
we would
menus.
just switch. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that was always a funny thing for me because I thought I was a local. Like if we asked a question to someone on the street, like they would just start speaking their native tongue to me like I understood. And I always found that kind of fun.
Yeah, I think, there's so many moments over the years. I mean, like every culture is so different that it's like, it's hard to even pinpoint. Like if I were to start talking about it, like the things that come to mind are the things from Russia, because that's like the most recent. So like, living in Kazan and like having a week of minus 24 degrees with that's not wind chill. And every other night, like snow being carried off the streets with dump trucks and construction equipment.
Mind you, I had a Canada Goose coat that I asked for my birthday in August before we left. And I was able to go outside and like snippets, but Jordan didn't have one. He has to get one if we go back this year. And he was struggling. It's very cold.
So just seeing like that, those differences, like, like the amount of snow and like literal dump trucks full of snow, like roaming the streets, and like the difficulties in ordering things. Like I talk about just things that really just are really odd. I remember one time we had this year, like we went to dinner and we finished and we called our Yandex, which is Russian Uber. And we go outside and like, they're like, the driver's here. And all there was this like beat up car, like blasting like techno music. And we're like looking around and I'm like double checking, like, no, that's the license plate. So like we walk up to the car and he like turns the music down, takes us all the way home. As soon as we get out, cranks it back up. I mean, this shit was so loud. Excuse me, I'm probably not allowed to cuss, but it was so loud. It was just like, that was one of those moments where we literally looked at each other and we're like, I can't believe like this is really our life. Like it's some of the most just, unique experiences. It's so hard to list them because it's constant.
Nothing surprises us at this point.
No.
Yeah, I can only imagine kind of just day to day in Russia, the types of like surprises.
Oh my gosh.
Just being on YouTube, I feel like, you get all those like Russian dash cams and it's like all kinds of wild things are happening.
Yeah.
In the world of travel and adventure, it's easy to say, someday I'm going to do this or someday I'm going to see that. But our friends at Frost River are challenging all of us to start seeking our somedays today.
Frost River Adventure Gear isn't just made with durability in mind. It's made with your next adventure at heart. With a bag or pack from Frost River, you can find adventure in the everyday.
For the past 2 decades, Frost River has set the standard in adventure packs, bags, and gear. Now they're raising the bar. Not only do they source made in the USA materials to handcraft each and every pack, They also repair packs to thwart throwaway culture and are now using solar energy to create even less waste without compromising quality.
Whether your next adventure is a stroll through a local park or a backcountry camping trip, Frost River has the sustainably made gear that you need.
So stop waiting for your next adventure and start seeking your someday today at frostriver.com/wanderers and use the promo code WANDERERS for free shipping on your next order. Once again, that's www.frostriver.com/wanderers and use the code WANDERERS at checkout.
Thanks so much to Frost River for sponsoring this episode of the show.
So what was this like? So we're in like the middle of a pandemic in 2020. Like you get a call from your agent that's like, hey, like, have you heard of Kazan? What was that process like, kind of making the decision to go over there, making the move, and kind of getting set up during like a pandemic as well?
Yeah. So, I actually was very familiar with the club because it was a really good opportunity. So, I was excited for it. And, we were both really excited for the opportunity because it was kind of something an opportunity that we had worked for years to get to. So that was really exciting. But then it was so funny because we spent the whole summer last year, like isolated, like we barely saw family because of COVID. We didn't want my contract to be in jeopardy because we had like clauses in the contract about the season being canceled due to COVID and different things. So that was really it made us really anxious and we were very cautious. But then to actually go to Russia, it was like when you step off the plane in Moscow, it's like COVID no longer exists. And it was so bizarre. And we spent the season like that. I mean, people were we were traveling in and out of European countries where there was an immense level of caution. Like we flew to Spain and the airport was completely closed.
And then you can't leave your hotel room when you're in the different countries.
Right. Like we would fly to Spain and the airport would be completely closed. Like we would be the only flight coming in. And then they'd be like, you're not allowed to leave the hotel. And then you come back to Russia and it's normal life. You go in the grocery store, no masks, no, people literally live their life as if it's not there. And so that was I can't tell you how many borders I crossed this year during COVID. So I saw everything. I got the lowdown on the different COVID tests, where it's different and how it's just real, I don't even know how to explain it. Real bizarre, firsthand experience of seeing COVID and how it impacted all these different places.
Yeah, I can imagine that would be a really interesting and wild experience to have. And I think it's maybe not totally comparable, but we left Canada at the end of October in 2020, and Canada's been very, very shut down and people are quite cautious there. And we get to Mexico and we're in Puerto Vallarta on the West Coast. And it's the clubs are open, the bars are open, the strip clubs are open. Not that we're frequenting those places, but it's just kind of a totally different world. And, people are hugging you and shaking your hand and you're oh, okay, I guess this is just not happening here.
I kind of had a similar experience. Something Jordan didn't mention is I couldn't go the first 3 months of his contract in Russia because of COVID. So I was waiting for a visa to have the opportunity to go. And then the only visa I could get was one that was for only 3 months. So when I went for those 3 months, the vaccine wasn't, obviously wasn't readily available at that time. So when I got there, I was still being very cautious. And I did make some friends with some Russian girlfriends. And they're like, oh, one night, let's just go to dinner, And I was like, okay. So we went to dinner and then they're like, oh, we're going to another place. And before you know it, I'm in the middle of this club with hundreds of people, no masks. And I text Jordan and I was like, oh, it's over for me. I was it's over. I'm definitely getting COVID. And, he was really worried about me. Thankfully, I didn't get COVID.
She's on COVID watch for a good 3 or 4 days. Yeah.
Right. I had to sleep in the other room. But then I went home and I was home for 1 month before returning back to Russia. And in that 1 month time frame, I was able to get the vaccine. So when I came back, I was ready to go all out. So
that was one frustrating thing too about going to Russia was they had all the players in the league there and our wives couldn't come. And it was they wouldn't give visas for family. And it was you're not keeping people safe because people are just doing what they want to do anyways. Like it's like, what's the point? You know, that was kind of frustrating.
Yeah, for sure. I have a friend who plays for the Dallas Stars. And he's Canadian. Him and his wife both are. And because of the restrictions early, or I think it was like the end of last season, his wife like wasn't able to go and see him. He was in like the NHL bubble for the playoffs, and they had a new baby. Like their baby was like 3 months old. And so I'd see posts from both of them. And when she finally got cleared to get into the bubble, it was like really cool to see their reunion and stuff. Cause they'd been apart for, can't remember exactly how long, but somewhere between 1 and 3 months. And that's like, when you've got like a 3-month-old, that's like a big, like your baby changes a lot in that time period. And I just remember thinking like, man, this is like a weird time we're living in.
Yeah.
It is a weird time. And I think Jordan had a friend that he wasn't even able to go back for the birth of their child and see them because he was like, by the time I get back to the US for the birth, it's like I might have COVID. I don't want to give the baby COVID. So it's just like, oh, it's so hard for people right now.
Yeah, for sure. And so you guys stayed over in Russia for how long?
So we were there I was there from August until April. So for 8 months, KT was there for
4 months.
About half of that. Yeah.
And then are you going back this year as well?
Yeah, that's the plan.
Yeah. So, I mean, we really liked Russia. You hear all of these. Actually, it's funny. My Canadian cousins in Windsor, they were telling me about Moscow and St. Petersburg, specifically St. Petersburg. They're like, you got to go. It's so beautiful.
Yeah.
And this was before Jordan even signed there. And we were like, okay, like it's kind of weird they keep raving about it.
Yeah.
Well, then once we signed the contract, they were like, oh, I'm so excited for you to go to St. Petersburg. And then we went and we're like, okay, this is what they were talking about. It really is amazing.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the stereotypes aren't true. The people are really cool.
It's
like
different.
I said,
it's a different culture. I will say it's not your typical European culture, but we really enjoyed Russia. Like it's a lot of nice restaurants and
we made friends
cool
there with the locals and things like that.
It was a very cool country. We liked it, even with the cold.
Yeah. We were definitely. I think we both haven't been there. We've only done like a little bit of Eastern Europe, but we both definitely want to go check out Russia and think it'd be a cool place to go spend a longer period of time. Remember, we had. Some people telling us like, oh, hey, they're just like not doing COVID in Russia. And we were like, when can we get flights? But
you would love it.
The really weird list of countries that they weren't letting in. It was like, if you were from like Tanzania or Iran or like random countries like North Korea, you can come in. But if you're from Canada, prohibited because of COVID.
Right.
So weird. I don't know how they decide those lists.
I don't either.
I do wonder if it has to do with like reciprocity. Like I feel like Canadians aren't getting let into a lot of places right now because Canada's completely closed to like anyone who's not Canadian. So I feel like these governments are like, until you open your border, your people cannot come to our place. And I'm like, come on, open the border.
Yeah, it's like, hey, you won't let us in. We're not letting you in.
And so you guys have seen lots of cities that maybe aren't like on the biggest map for travelers or tourists. What would you say are some of the like under the radar cities that you've fallen in love with, whether it's, in Turkey or Europe or Russia?
Ooh. So Jordan got citizenship in Slovenia, and the capital of Slovenia is Ljubljana. And I would say that's probably the most underrated city that I've been to because like you never hear of Slovenia. Like growing up, I never even, it's sad, but we didn't know it existed before we went. And
that was the case when the agent was like, I got a contract for you in Slovenia. And I was like, where?
Is that where Dracula's from?
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of how I felt. But, to her point, it ended up being.
Yeah, there's so many great tourist attractions there. Our favorite probably being Lake Bled. And then we also were able...
But Ljubljana itself, though, it was the green capital of Europe at one point. It's beautiful walking city, pedestrian. It's all like walking, restaurants, river. It's just beautiful.
And we talked about the when he had the day off or a few days off, we could just take... he had a vehicle, so we would just drive to Venice and spend a day or two.
Yeah. So 1 hour drive to Trieste, 2 hour drive to Venice. You get to Zagreb, Croatia in like an hour and a half, maybe.
Yeah, super underrated.
Yeah, it's a great country. Great city too, Ljubljana.
And then I'd also say in France, probably Nantes.
No, I was thinking that. You stole that from me.
Yeah, loved it.
For sure, Nantes was a cool city to live in. That was our second year. Another clean city. A lot of like walking space. A lot of cool restaurants downtown. There's a lot of space to walk.
You can also drive to Paris.
Yeah, Paris is a few hours drive. You may be even able to catch a train, but Nantes was a really cool city, right in Western France, off close to the Atlantic, close to wine region, close to the Loire Valley wine region. So we went to a few wineries and things like that, but we really liked Nantes too. It was cool.
Amazing. Ryan's been to Ljubljana, but I haven't been to either of those places that you listed. So definitely adding those to my list.
There you go.
Yeah.
How'd you like Ljubljana, Ryan?
I loved it. Yeah, I've always liked going to places that are kind of like a bit weird. And so Slovenia for me, it was like, I was like planning a trip to Eastern Europe and I was like, Slovenia, never heard of it. I'm going to go there. And I remember I took the train in from Austria. And like when you get off the train, it looks like very kind of communist, dark. It was like a gray day. And I was like, I don't know. I don't know if this is the right place for me.
Right.
But as soon as you kind of just walk through that and like into the downtown, and it feels like you've entered into like, I don't know, like a Disney movie or something, like the cobblestone streets. It's just the most beautiful place and just the perfect size of a city as well, where it's like big enough to have everything you want, but just so small that you can walk around and, sit on a patio, go for a coffee, so many awesome things.
Great patios and things to eat there and drink coffee, all that. Loved
and in
it.
the middle of the city, there's, you could take a little boat ride. And
Yeah,
it's
we
just
did that too.
the most peaceful thing. And yeah, the city really comes alive. Like when the weather's nice.
When the weather's nice, yeah.
It's so beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. We definitely, as soon as I got back from that with Amanda, I was like, we need to go to Ljubljana again and like spend some time. It was there and Český Krumlov in the Czech Republic. I went on that trip as well. And was like, I need to go back to that place.
I've never been there.
I would like to go there.
Also really cool, just like it's in the kind of Bohemia part of the Czech Republic. And it's just this like magical little town. Looks like it could be in like, the 1500s or something.
Yeah.
And so, I'd love to talk a little bit about On Arrival and podcasting. How did you guys kind of start thinking like, hey, we want to start podcasting? What was that story like?
So I'm an avid podcast listener. Primarily true crime, embarrassingly enough. But I thought it was a great way, coming from a marketing background, to get some exposure and to pursue something that we are passionate about. Both of us really grew to love travel over the years. And one season, like he said, we were in Turkey for 2 years. One season he was in this small village, and I accentuate village, and it was Bandırma was the name of it. So then we went to Istanbul and we took a direct flight to the Maldives. It was an amazing trip. We're sitting on the overwater bungalow and we were like, Jordan said to me, like, what are you passionate about? Like, you keep complaining about going back and forth for work. Like, what do you want to do? And I was like, I'm passionate about travel. And he's like, all right, let's work with that. So from that moment, we started brainstorming, and it was kind of 2 years in the making. We really invested in like the URL and branding and just listening to podcast episodes about what equipment we need and what we need to, get in place before we start. And yeah, this idea just kind of came alive for us.
I think it's important to share that, like, the conversations that we have on Arrival or here today, right, with you guys, are conversations that we would have over dinner. We love talking about travel. We love talking about the world and learning about new places and where we want to go next and sharing our experiences. So it was kind of natural for us to, we've done a lot of conversations with friends and people we know about their really crazy stories, right? Which I'm sure you guys have done the same. And so it does come really natural to both of us because we really do love travel and love seeing the world more than anything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think both of us can really relate to that. Like our like the idea for the World Wanderers came from, backpacking in South America and just feeling like we're meeting so many cool people on the road and we're having these amazing connections and these amazing conversations over, dinner, drinks, and talking about the world and how travel can, help you live a better life and that type of thing. And why don't we share this on a bigger scale? So can definitely relate to that sort of that why and that mission.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I was sharing my itineraries with just my mom and these experiences, and then she started coming overseas every year, and we're like,
Yeah.
then
Friends
people started
you.
asking us to plan their trips and give them recommendations.
Yeah.
So it's been a fun journey.
I like what you said too about how travel makes you a better person. That's one of the reasons why I really enjoy On Arrival and like podcasting about travel, is because you hear from all these people about how travel has made them better, how it's inspired them, and, you know, really changed their lives. I don't want to say that in a dramatic way, but it has. And when you get that kind of perspective, when you're able to see the world and things that are outside of your norm, your normal, it really does change you, and for the better.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially like, moving from place to place, you have to start thinking about the way you identify yourself. And when you're learning different languages and, being in those situations where you don't speak a language and everyone around you is speaking a language and you're like, are they talking about me? What's going on? You have to go through so many situations traveling that kind of force you to evolve.
Yes.
Exactly. Exactly. Force you, like, really.
Yeah, for sure. One of the big things for me I found was I feel like I was like quite type A and quite like wanted to be in control of things prior to traveling. And I feel like maybe not necessarily going to places like Western Europe, but going to like Southeast Asia was like,
Right.
Just kind of forced me to not be like that. Cause it's like, I mean, you can be like the train or the bus is supposed to arrive at this time. And then I'm supposed to arrive here at this time. And you can be like frustrated that that's not happening, or you can accept the fact that there's like literally nothing you can do about the situation and just enjoy the experience. And I feel like for me, that's been like one of the most impactful things about travel. I'd love to hear for you guys, maybe, a couple things that have been impactful for you guys in, who you are as people through your travels.
I relate to that story, actually. It reminds me of St. Petersburg, when you have a short duration of you're in a location for 5 days and you have this long itinerary of things and everything has to be timed out. I even caught myself, even just this year, my type A personality really came out, where I said to Jordan, like, I'm getting upset about this and I want to be able to let go a little bit, and just realizing that and having that understanding that, everything's not going to be perfect. You kind of just got to go with the flow. And I think that's what travel has done for me.
Yeah. One of the things, and I talked about this yesterday, one of the things that I've grown to appreciate about traveling, especially the way we have, is it's forced us to understand and really identify like what is important to us. We find ourselves like not really spending money on things we don't need.
Downsizing every year.
Because the amount of things that you have to leave in these places, like, it gets to be staggering. And so you're really selective. Like, do I need this? And, they got shows like The Minimalist, right, on Netflix or whatever. And it's like, we've been forced into that type of lifestyle just because we've been so, on the move in our life.
Yeah. It's funny, like every season, at the end of the season, we buy an espresso machine every year. And sometimes I'm able to donate that to a school. Like one year I did that, or just give it to a friend. And it makes me feel better about it. But every year I'm like, oh, we're buying an espresso machine every year. I just want to take it with me. And, we still haven't been able to yet. But it makes you just realize, like, what is important for you? This
year she put her foot down and we packed an espresso in our stuff for if we come back. Or actually, I think it's in our stuff to be shipped to us no matter where we go.
Right.
Because she put her foot down.
Buying one every
it's
year.
It's $100. Okay. And we probably save that much on coffee shop coffee.
True.
So for me, I just, my personality is like, I just chalk that up like, well, that's the cost of like moving. Right. But she's like, she just sees that $100 going out the window every time. And she's like, I'm sick of it. Like, we're keeping it.
Yeah, we actually have some friends who are nomads who actually travel with an espresso machine. They just went from Mexico to Nicaragua, and then they're like, "Yeah, we brought our espresso machine with us, so they're good to go." But
I wish you wouldn't have told her that.
You can totally do it. No, but someone needs to come up with like appliance Airbnb, where it's like we've often thought of like showing up in a new place and like maybe like I could get like a kettlebell and like a better kettle, or just a kettle in the first place, or an espresso machine, and just have those like at the Airbnb and then return them after my time.
Whoever's listening, that's your next startup idea.
Yeah, I feel like I'll add one to the mix, which is like, I mean, you mentioned KT like buying a Canada Goose Down jacket, which is like, those things are not cheap. Like that is an investment. And I feel like we went for a friend's wedding in February in Colorado. And I mean, we live in Mexico, so we have like rain jackets here with us that we literally never wear. So we're like tramping around Colorado in the winter in like Vans and rain jackets. And I was like, man, I just need a service. Like, I don't want to buy a winter jacket. I don't want to buy boots for like a week-long trip. I just need a service where I can like rent these things and then like drop it off at the airport on my way out.
I feel your pain. We went to Budapest the year before, not this past season, but 2 seasons ago. And we were living in Izmir, Turkey, which is
very
on
warm,
the Mediterranean.
nice,
it doesn't get cold.
We were not prepared.
I had like this tiny jacket, and it was January in Budapest, and it was like biting, freezing. It was so cold.
We froze.
Oh my gosh. Like ducking in the coffee shop every chance we could. It was like, you know, it was miserable, but we loved Budapest, so it was worth it.
Totally. And so one final question. I know you're it sounds like heading back to Russia. What's kind of on your travel list, if like whether it's in Russia, things you want to see on those off times you have, or elsewhere in Europe?
Yeah, so you know, our next trip, we're actually taking a trip before Russia. We are going to Aruba.
Yeah.
Breaking the news. We are going in 2 weeks. We're super excited for that. Our first time there. And then I would love to venture and see a little more of Moscow. I've only been to the airport for connecting flights. So I would love to see Moscow. And then, as we say on our podcast, literally every week, we cannot wait to do a trip through Asia.
Yeah, which is like completely closed right now. It's almost Canada closed, almost Canada level of closed. So we're like, you know, we're ready to get and go see, you know, Southeast Asia for sure.
Southeast Asia, if you're listening, it's time to open your borders.
Please.
Please. We're dying. Like maybe at the end of next season, we'll be able to take that trip. Fingers crossed. But they're pretty strict.
Yeah, no, for sure. Hopefully they'll start easing restrictions soon and you guys can do that because we spent a bit of time in Asia and just, it's amazing. It's incredible. Every country we've been to there is so unique and the food's great. So I hope you guys get to go soon.
We're going to make it happen. I promise you that.
And I want to go to Canada.
Yeah. We want to see more
I want to
Canada.
see my cousins. And then we also want to go to Vancouver and Montreal, or have been on our list for years. So it's like Canadians too. Come on. We're ready. We're vaccinated. Let us in.
We also want to go back to Canada as well. So.
The Canadians got to go first.
Awesome. Well, so for everyone who wants to go check out On Arrival, where should they go to find that and to connect with you guys online?
Yeah. So search On Arrival on wherever you listen to podcasts. We're on every platform, or head to onarrival.com and you'll find every episode there.
Amazing. Thank you guys for your time today. This has been really great.
Yeah, thank you guys for having us.
Yeah, it was fun.
Thanks for listening to this episode. If you want more, make sure to check out the World Wanderers Insider, available on Patreon at patreon.com/theworldwanderers.
For show notes, head over to theworldwanderers.com. Find us on social media at The World Wanderers Podcast and join the private Facebook community at World Wanderers, a community for travelers.
You can always get in touch with us at info@theworldwanderers.com. And if you enjoyed the show, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. It really helps us find new listeners.
See you next time.